But he didn't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I retire." He kept going, and he ended up being the best stand-up comic of all time. Hi, Benjamin here today to talk about some of my biggest influences in comedy and some of the people who drive me to do what I do today. Biggest influences in comedy film would be the comedy films made in the late 90s and early 2000s. These really strike a chord with me, and I've just had so much fun watching them. I remember during COVID, when everything was shut down, really the brightest part of my days was knowing at the end of the day that I would watch a new comedy from the 90s or early 2000s. These movies really hit home with me, and I just love the style of comedy in them, and I connect with them so well. It really bothered me that they were no longer being made. Really wanting to bring back that style of comedy is what's really driven me to make the style of comedy that I make today. Some of the biggest influences are the American Pie series, Superbad, Eurotrip, Road Trip, Van Wilder. Anything in that sort of vicinity has definitely influenced me a ton. Some of my biggest influences include Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy. A side note about Seth MacFarlane is I had a family member back in the day who very anti-Family Guy and lobbied my parents successfully to not let me watch the show, and would always tell me, when you're older, you'll understand. When you're older, you'll understand this guy isn't funny. This show is repulsive. And this family member was right that I will understand a lot more, but as I got older, it was the exact opposite. As I learned how tough it is to write and come up with comedic content, I only grew a deeper appreciation for Seth MacFarlane. Judd Apatow, who you may know as the director of films including This Is 40, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and Knocked Up, and then stand-up comics Dave Chappelle and George Carlin. All of them have really gotten a lot of shit for things they've made, jokes they've told throughout the years, and compared to what the industry's really done as a whole and just shutting things down and saying, we don't want to do this because X group of people said why, they've really just kept going, and I really think that that's really a recipe for success. I mean, for example, George Carlin got arrested back in the day just for some of the language he was using in his stand-up routine. But he didn't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I retire." He kept going, and he ended up being the best stand-up comic of all time. Dave Chappelle got so much shit for things that he said and done on Chappelle's show. He didn't stop going. He fought the producers. Dave Chappelle got barred from a venue that he wanted to do a stand-up show at. Instead of backing down, he just went across the street. I think of a quote, and this is paraphrased. This is from Todd Phillips, the director of Road Trip, Old School, and The Hangover, to name a few. He said in giving advice, he would say, "Don't ever let anyone without a funny bone tell you what you can and can't joke about." Anyways, those were some of my biggest influences. I'd love to hear who influences you. Leave a comment down below.